From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to Parshat Ki Tetze, between a man and his animal. If we look at Parshat Ki Tetze, it mentions a number of mitzvot that relate to the relationship between a person and their animal. And the question is, does God have a special interest in how we treat animals? Or is there another approach? The mitzvot abound. Most famously, and we'll discuss this more in depth, is the shiluach hakan, the idea of sending away the mother bird when you want to take the chicks or the eggs. A few weeks ago we learned about shechita, that you have to slaughter the animal in a certain kind of way. There's a prohibition of oto bepeno, not to slaughter the mother and the child on the same day if you want to eat the meat of animals. And even the notion of harbat klaim, to not mix breed animals. Rambam writes in the Guide to Perplex that animals don't like to breed in between species. So trying to breed them together is also an offense to the animals, perhaps. And of course, lo tachrosh shor chamo yachtav, not to yoke an ox and a donkey together, because also it's very unpleasant, certainly for the donkey, to try to keep up with an ox. So in all these mitzvot, is the purpose per se to be kind to animals, or is there another view? So the Rambam says, of course, it's to be kind to animals. But the Ramban says, no, the Torah is not interested per se in how to treat an animal. In fact, sometimes we slaughter an animal, but rather is trying to develop our character. That's the goal. The goal of Torah is not that in the end we'll treat the chimpanzees right. No. The goal of the Torah is that in the end people will treat people right. But the way we treat a chimpanzee might have implications for how you treat a human being. In sort of evolutionary circles where we're just a bunch of advanced apes, so then the moral difference between how you treat a monkey and how you treat a bird or an ant or a human being, it's just a matter of evolutionary scale. But for us who believe that there is a difference, so then yes, we still want to treat our animals properly. But according to Ramban, it's not because we have some special moral responsibility toward animals, but rather it's a responsibility to develop our character so that we can treat each other properly. That comes first. We have to focus on that. Sometimes when you focus on too many things, you don't get it done. There are histories of individuals and communities who were very good to their animals, but they sometimes would kill their Jews. So these are two views. However, if you prefer the Rambam, certainly that's a view that all these things are to promote kindness to animals. Now, the question of hurting an animal for no reason, that's clear. The Talmud in Bava Metzia clearly says that most authorities say that tsar b'alechaim doraisa, that there's a Torah prohibition against causing suffering to an animal. These laws were a little different, where we're trying to be kind to the animal. That's a different question. But as far as not hurting an animal, unless it's for human need, that's different. The rabbis do say, Shulchan Aruch, that if you have a human need, you need some shoes, you can kill the animal. It doesn't have to be in the kindest way. If you need a certain type of hat, it's cold outside, and you need a certain type of fur, you could use that fur. Now, we have to be ecological. We talked about last week about the idea of bal tashchid, not wasting things. If you could have a nice synthetic hat, maybe it doesn't make sense to waste the life of a raccoon, because if you could have had a nice synthetic hat. So we can talk about efficacy and true human need versus human want, but for human need and perhaps want, we could cause harm to animals. But other than that, it's prohibited to cause pain to animal needlessly, and that's why. What's the source of that? Well, either this week's parsha that you should help the animal if they're overburdened by a friend of yours or even an enemy. You should help unburden the animal, straighten out their load so they'll be able to continue. Or is the source that Rachamal kol masav? We say in the Ashrei prayer, Psalm 145, that his mercy is on all of his creatures. So too, we should have mercy on all of his creatures as well. So that's different. Whether we definitely cannot needlessly afflict an animal, but the question is, are these mitzvot designed to be kind to an animal, that is a question. Now the Talmud, strangely enough, the Mishnah clearly says, and strangely says, that there are certain things for which a chazan or a leader of the service is removed or quieted or shut up, and that would mishatkinoto, and one of them is that if somebody said, just like you had mercy on the mother bird, so too you should have mercy on us. We quiet them down. We say, no, we don't want you to be the chazan. That's not the type of prayer that we make. What's wrong with that? After all, didn't God tell us to have mercy on the mother bird, send away the mother bird, so God should have mercy on us too? Makes sense, right? What's the problem? So Rashi says, it's not a problem. The interpretation could be fine. As a matter of fact, there are midrashim that say that the reason for sending away the mother bird is, in fact, mercy. But Rashi says, if you say that, you should have mercy on him because of, the reason is because of mercy, so in another mitzvah where you can't figure out such a rationale, you might say, well, that mitzvah I'm not going to do. I don't see any reason for it. He says, no, look, all the mitzvah we do because we believe in God and God told us to do these things. So there's no question about it. So therefore, we don't want to get too much into the reasoning of mitzvot because that may start differentiating between what we want to do and what we don't want to do. The Tosfos Yontav gives a distinction which I always thought made a lot of sense, and that is that when you interpret the Torah, when you see a law in the Torah, you can give whatever reasons you want to. You can give 20 reasons, as we will in a moment. But when it comes to speaking to God in a prayer, that if you're standing in front of God, you better not say something false. So if you say to God, you know why we send away the mother bird? Because God likes birds. We don't know that for sure. If you want to give a class and you want to say that God likes birds, okay, fine. That's interpretation, as good as any other one. But when you're talking to God, don't tell God why he said something. That's a different story. God may love it. He may give you credit for studying Torah. But when you're talking to God, you better be certain about what you're saying. Otherwise, it's a falsehood. We don't speak falsehoods in front of God. So that's why it was problematic to discuss the reason for the mitzvah in a prayer. Finally, there's been a suggestion that the reason it's objectionable to make this prayer about the mother bird has to be seen in the context of that Mishnah. In that Mishnah, they're talking about heretical things. Someone who says, Modim, I thank you, God, I thank you, God. Oh, do you think there are two gods? One, the good God and the bad God? So that's called dualism. Or maybe it's a Trinitarian, maybe it's a Christian who thinks that there are three gods, or some form thereof, there are really one, or whatever the philosophy and theology might be. And maybe it was designed against such a person. And therefore, maybe in that context, and other statements, that's where the Mishnah said that if you think that all the mitzvahs are just about love, right? We know there's a certain religion that tends to emphasize that everything's about love. Maybe that shows that they're not part of our folks. Or maybe it's saying that God is about love, but not about other things. And there's some kind of dualism going on. So you certainly want to negate that type of thing. Finally, what are the reasons for this mitzvah? So there have been 6 reasons that have been given, just very briefly. Number 1, we mentioned that we want to have mercy on the animals. Ramban, no, it's about building our character, so we should be the type of people who wouldn't do that to an animal and certainly wouldn't do it to a human being. Ramban also mentions the idea of kiyum hamin, that when I take the mother and the babies, I could be wiping out a whole family of birds. Maybe that's the last bird of that type that's around. I have to preserve the species. You always want to leave some of the kids alone. The Zohar gives a different reason. The Zohar says that when you send away the mother bird begins to cry. And then God hears the mother bird and stirs up its mercy. When it stirs up its mercy for the mother bird, maybe it stirs up its mercy for the Jews too, who are perhaps compared to a bird, to a dove. And that's what it's all about. We'll come back to that in a second. The Vilna Gaon thought that this is the one mitzvah that's the opposite of everything we said until now. It's actually a mitzvah of cruelty, that we don't want. We don't want the mitzvah, the Torah, to be filled with only mitzvahs of kindness. A person has to learn how to be cruel sometimes too. So we practice on a mother bird. Send away that mother bird. Yeah, but I feel bad for the mother bird. No, send it away. Sometimes, in order to survive in this world, if the good people will survive in this world, they're going to have to learn how to be cruel sometimes, because otherwise we'll be taken over by all those who are cruel all the time. So it's a training for, sometimes, in a very limited sense, you need to sometimes have some cruelty. Finally, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says, you don't send the mother bird away because you want to respect the mother-child relationship. Just like we respect it in human relations, we want to respect it here as well. It's about respecting that value of the bond of parent to child. What difference does it make which approach you take? If you take either the Zohar approach or the Vilna Gaon approach, then it's not about kindness. If it's about kindness, then if I was walking through the forest and I saw a bird, I wouldn't send it away. You say, what do you mean? You get a mitzvah if you send the mother bird away. Yeah, but the mitzvah is just to say that don't be so cruel as to take the mother bird, plus take the animals. Just send away the mother bird first. But it's still cruel. But if you don't need to take the chicks, don't send anybody away. Don't afflict the animal needlessly. However, according to the Zohar, that stirs up God's mercy. So you should send it away to stir up God's mercy. If you're trying to train yourself to be a little bit cruel, maybe every time you see a mother bird, you should send it away to train yourself in this way. So Rav Asher Weiss says, look, the Zohar, it doesn't really fit with other sources. I don't know what it's talking about. Now, there is such a custom that it's nice to get the mitzvah of sending away your mother bird. After all, the Torah promises reward for it. So I'll tell you what. If you find the mother bird in a place where you really don't want the mother bird to be there, you don't want the nest to be there, you know what? Send away the mother bird, you get the mitzvah, take the chicks. But if you're in a place where you have no business there, you're in the middle of a forest, and you happen to bump into a mother bird, why would you send it away? There's no reason to do so. Most authorities say we're trying to inculcate kindness. So why would you do an act of cruelty in order to inculcate an act of kindness? Unless you need the eggs. If you need the eggs, it's permitted, and then you get the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. So these are some perspectives on Bein Adam Levehemto, the mitzvahs between a person and their animal. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.